CITIUS MAG live from Eugene. Chris Chavez and Eric Jenkins here, and we've got a loaded slate of guests today on the show. People who've made this year's Olympic team, but we're going to kick things off with one of the greatest distance runners in American history, the Olympic bronze medalist in the marathon from 2016, the Olympic silver medalist in the 10K from 2012, Galen Rupp. Galen, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. It's great to be here.
So I guess let's catch up. Orlando was back in February. You went a little viral, I guess, for the puking photo at the finish line.
Oh, did I?
Yeah, it was all over Instagram.
That's news to me. All right.
And so then afterwards, I guess we didn't really see a whole lot or hear a lot about you after that race. What's been up the last couple months?
Yeah, I was a bit out of it after that race, but it was obviously a real tough one for me. And I had surgery in April, so just a lot of things have been going on the last couple of years, and so now I thought it was a good time to fix it, and hopefully we're past all of that. But I've just been rehabbing since then. I just got the okay about a week and a half ago to start running again, but it's super slow. Like I run for a minute, walk for a minute. I ran with Ricky this morning out on Priest Trail. Probably look like a scrub, like jogging and then walking for a while, but it's been great to be back, and my body's feeling really good.
That'd be great to see Galen Rupp just walking on Priest Trail.
A little different. Yeah. So, Galen, I guess give us the timeline of just sort of the health leading into Orlando, and then just where you were at that point, and then you gave it the best effort you could, and honestly, given all those factors, the finish was impressive.
Oh, well, thanks. Yeah, it was really rough over there. It's no secret. I've had a lot of health problems the last couple of years. I had a lot of issues with my back where I had a herniated disc, and I had problems that showed up on MRI with my hip, but I had a torn labrum and a couple impingements is what they fixed. But a lot of people have torn labrums and it doesn't bother them, and so everyone's like, "You're back, you're back, you're back," and that was all I put my effort into. And all of a sudden, after a couple of years, my back started feeling good, but something still just really didn't feel right. My buildup was definitely pretty rough before the trials. I wasn't able to do workouts that I could hit in high school, it was just really, really frustrating because aerobically I felt so good. And I'd talk to Mike and be like, "Yeah, breathing feels great. I feel like I'm in good shape. I literally can't move." And, but that's the thing about the trials is you have to be ready on that day. And so I gave it my best. But, yeah, it was definitely very rough and really, really a tough one for me.
When did that race start to get hard? Because, for you as an athlete, you go into that just even if it's so painful, all right, top 3 is the goal. And, I think you'd been sort of in that world ranking quota. So, everyone kind of trying to figure out that whole side of things. So for you, at what point in the race was all right, this year's Olympic dream is slipping away?
I mean, I was really hurting even at halfway,
wow.
Which is not a usual feeling for me. Normally for me in the marathon, it was always about relaxing, getting to halfway as easy as possible, and you don't really even start looking to compete until 8, 6, 5 miles to go. And that was my plan going in there, but I was really, really struggling to stay on. And then, I did have to stop a few times, to try to stretch out. It was my wife and kids were out there. And I remember telling myself, there's no way I'm not going to finish this. But, yeah, there were periods where I was walking and, I stopped. I saw them and I really, really broke down with about maybe a mile and a half to go. Stopped and gave them a hug. And, it was just tough. I think you can kind of tell when it's not your day. And I knew something wasn't right with me physically, but just wanted to get across the line, and then you move on to the next thing.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, go ahead, Eric.
Well, I was gonna say, we're here in Eugene, Hayward Field in the background. With your college career, your professional career, you got to be one of the most winningest athletes to ever compete at Hayward. Are there any races that stand out to you? What's some of your most favorite experiences thinking about Hayward?
I have so many, even coming down here, I remember just being in awe in high school, coming down for the state meet. And pre-classic you saw us be the day after the state meet finished. So we'd run the state meet, stay and watch pre, and it was the most unbelievable weekend of track. And I just loved it. The energy, there really was nothing like it. And so to be able to compete down here at the U of O, be a Duck, I mean, you know what it's like. It definitely, they give you a lift, for sure. Running that Oregon uniform here and former Ducks, even now you hear the ovations they get. And when they're in it, I do believe that crowd makes a huge difference. I would say as far as races, pre-classic in 2014 when I won the 10K, you know, broke the American record. That was just an unbelievable day. And then the Olympic trials, you know, all the trials, but really like 2012 was a great one. You know, I ran great in the 10K.
Yeah.
You know,
that was when the rain was when it was absolutely coming down, right?
Yeah. And then for me too, like it was just really cool to get over the hump in the 5K, you know, and finally beat Bernard, who was just unbelievable. And to beat him, you know, in a kicker's race was something that I worked so hard for years to try to get that kick, and to be able to put it together and get it there, that set me up so much, you know, for the summer and really my career. It gave me so much confidence, that 5K race.
When we look at some of the athletes right now who are like, they're on a hot streak right now. It's like Josh Kerr and Jakob Ingebrigtsen, you know, they're on it. There's been periods where like you look at Grant Fisher's like, this guy can't lose. What was sort of that period that you felt that you were most like on? Like, was there a span of time that you're like, oh yeah, from like 2012, you know, April to August, like I was on?
Yeah, I think all from 2012 through 2014, you know, for sure was great. You know, 2012 was big. You know, physically I was probably in, you know, the best shape I've been in, but mentally, what happened to me, you know, at the trials and then after the Olympics, it just was such a big boost, because for so long you're scrapping and fighting. You know, I was like 5th, 6th, 7th in a lot of these races, and you know, I kept saying this is going to be the year I'm going to get over the hump. And for it to finally happen, that was just such a big moment for me, for my own confidence. And after that, it was like I knew that I belonged and really could compete with all these guys. And so that was a big one for me. I'll tell you this, meet though, I've been so impressed with Cole Hawker. I really think that this is his coming out party. I mean, he's my favorite in the 5K tonight. I think just the way he's run the heats as well. You know, he has just looked so impressive and dominant. You know, whether he wants to lead from the front the whole way, he's kicking from further out, and I just think he's the guy to beat tonight.
I know kind of training has like changed over the last couple of years, right? Like now everyone's kind of, you know, looking at the double threshold Norwegian model and everything. But you had this period of time too around like 2013, 2014 where you guys were dipping down, you know, to the mile and then like reaping the benefits of that, you know, come the 10K, 5K during the outdoor season. How did you sort of remember structuring that training where it's like, you know, you look at even someone like Hobbs throwing down to like a 143, 800. Like there's guys who are taking it and mastering that 1500 from the speed side of things and also like from the strength side of things, because you have Cole going, you know, 1250, 1258, whatever it was in LA, and who knows how fast he's going to go. So like, you know, both sides of it, you've experimented with both, you know, opposites of training, right?
Yeah, I mean, ironically, I hated doing the long stuff, like long runs, thresholds. I was good at it, but they were my least favorite thing to do by far. And the way that I always approached things was I was a sprinter. You know, I was like a sprinter trapped in a distance runner's body. But that was the way that I trained in everything. You know, we believed that we had to be strong enough that you can't get dropped. You obviously have to be really fit to run fast and be there at the end. But every bit of extra energy that you're spending on strength work after that is almost wasted time. We put all of that into sprinting. You know, I still believe speed kills, you know, and it's a fun mix right now, I think, of guys where you see a lot of them are coming from that strength approach. They're going to push, and it's lead to some incredible times. But, you know, I think now with Kerr and Cole as well, you're seeing that they've caught up with that strength runner, and it's deadly to be able to kick at the end. You know, if nobody can beat you in the last 100 meters, all you got to do is make sure you're there. And that's an easy thing to say, but those guys are doing it now, and I think that kick at the end is deadly and what you have to have ultimately to be one of the best.
Yeah, I remember in 2016 when you were still like marathon training, and you closed like a workout in with a 49-second 400.
Wait, what was this workout?
And I was like, what am I supposed to do with this shit? This is insane.
Wait, I want to hear the story. What was that workout?
I can't remember exactly what the workout was, but I just remember.
You remember it?
There was a really hard 400 at the end where
I did two of them.
Ran like 49.
I was it was right before we were in Utah, and we went down to Salt Lake. And we were running on an indoor track there actually because it was really hot out, and I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks. It was right before we left to go down to Rio. And yeah, we were doing K repeats. I think I did 6 or 8 of them, you know, probably like low 230s average. And then everything was about kicking. And so, you know, we run a couple fast quarters at the end, you know, lots of rest. But yeah, I ran 49 for those at the end of it. And that was like, gave me a ton of confidence. That was where I always got my confidence, was from my speed. But I remember when the marathon came around, I was like, I'm probably the only person in here that can break 50 for a quarter.
But yeah. You've got so much knowledge, so much experience. Really, there's only a few people in the world that have what you have. Do you ever think when you're done competing, when you hang them up, that you will get into coaching somehow?
Oh, I would love it. Yeah. I mean, we'll see what the future holds, but that would be my dream for sure. I feel so blessed and so fortunate to have been around so many smart people in all different disciplines. I did a ton of work with different sprint coaches over the years, and mechanics has always been a big thing for me, and I would love to be able to pass that on, to future generations, no doubt.
What about broadcaster? Because you did do a little TV with New York City Marathon, same seat that I did, and it's fun to get sort of the peek behind that, but even just sort of like hearing you speak right now, we had Centro on a couple nights ago. It's like, you guys, I would have listened to a podcast back in 2013 if you guys would have hosted something together.
Well, maybe I'll have to talk to Matthew about that, but I actually enjoyed it.
You won't get a word in.
That's true. But, I really loved it. I wasn't sure how I was going to enjoy it. It was definitely something new for me, but seeing it from that perspective, it's not easy what you all do. You got to get in and out, and you got to make sure that you're concise and to the point. But I really enjoyed it. And I would love to, if those opportunities come up, I would love to do it in the future for sure.
Were you always like a big go back and watch races kind of guy? Even when it came to just sort of studying up on the World Championship 5Ks or 10Ks and how those were executed by some of those, East African runners who were your biggest competition at the time. And Mo was your training partner, but even then, you had to sometimes study film on him probably.
Yeah, I didn't watch a ton of it.
Really?
The film that I watched was more mechanically, things that I was doing, what I needed to improve. And for me, the way that I learned so much of it is about seeing it, because I could, in my mind, I'm feeling, I'm using my arms a lot. And then I look on film and it's like, no, you can pump them way more. So little things like that. Certainly, I watched some races. I was aware of my competition. But, Mo and I, our strategy when we were running together was pretty simple most of the time. It was just, nobody's going to break us. We're strong enough that nobody's going to get away from us, and we're just going to outkick them at the end. Doesn't matter whether it's 100 meters, 200, 400, 600, we'll be ready to go. And certainly, over the course of the year, we would do things in shorter races a lot and practice different tactics so that we were comfortable with it. But we really both, I would say, prided ourselves on being versatile, but ultimately we knew we were going to out-sprint people at the end.
As a big biomechanical form guy, who do you think has the best form out there right now in both the middle and longer distances?
Yeah, I mean, I love watching the thing Mo. She's probably my favorite athlete to watch. When she's healthy and running well, she's unbelievable. I think Hawker again at the end, his mechanics have cleaned up, I think, a lot from the last couple of years. But you just watch him and what he's doing, he runs like a sprinter at that last lap, and you can see how he's able to accelerate so much. I think Kessler obviously has great form as well. He just looks like he's such a strong kid, and I think he had a background in rock climbing, is that right, as a kid? But he just looks so strong throughout his whole body, and I think that translates really well. But, a lot of the distance runners that I ran with that were great at what they did, they were all great athletes. They weren't, the uncoordinated, weak, kind of the typical stereotype of what you would think of a distance runner. So, I think that's something, kind of a myth that needs to get, put away a little bit.
Yeah.
Because they're all really athletic.
What do you think changed? Obviously, let's go to, both the 5K and 10K, which were your specialty events for a bit. The 1500, everyone gives Centro a lot of credit to, he won the Olympic final and it was 350 an hour. No one's ever going to let that race ever get that slow. And we've kind of seen that at all the global championships. How has the 5K and 10K changed since I would say maybe 2016 or so, in the way that it's run at the international stage?
Yeah, I mean, certainly races are a lot faster now, and I think that's normal with anything. I think in other sports too, you'll see NFL teams it was all about running back. You had to have a good running back and you'd run the ball a lot, and now they're passing like crazy. It's just the pendulum switches. And when I was competing, so much of it was more tactical. You had to be able to sprint. And now, it's switching to where you got to run really fast, and guys are pushing it from the bell. They're not scared to go. And same with the women. And it's, I'm sure it'll come back at some point. It might be 10 years, it might be 50 years, but, it's just cool to see the evolution of it. And like all things, I think it's a natural progression, but it's certainly different. In a way, I wish that it was run like this. You know, I think a faster race would have been really good for me in some of those championships, but it's a lot of work, you know, to lead. You know, I think there's a reason that, you know, in cycling, you know, it's maybe to more of an extreme, but it's hard to go off on a breakaway and lead everything yourself. So credit to those athletes that like to do that. But, you know, when I was competing, I was going to sit on them and I was going to outkick them at the end. And that was really how I looked at it. And Mo too.
You know, you're largely responsible for kind of bridging that gap between, you know, Americans and the East Africans and kind of raising the level of competition. So many people, you know, young runners, young athletes look up to you. Who were some people that you looked up to coming into the sport, and like who was inspiring you?
Man, you know, and I don't mean this as a knock, but, you know, American distance running, especially when I was coming up, wasn't very good. You know, it was a big accomplishment just to make it, you know, to World Championships or Olympics, and it was like if you had the standard, it's like, oh, you're going, like you're amazing. And then, you know, guys started making finals, and that was a big deal. But people I looked up to, I remember Bob Kennedy. I spent a lot of time with him when I was in high school, and he really mentored me and took me under his wing a lot, and I looked up to him a lot. I loved Abdi, which is like weird because I compete against him, but I remember going on runs with him even when I was in high school, when he would come out to Portland and Nike. And I looked up to a lot of the Africans. I loved watching Shaheen run, the steeplechaser. He was one of my favorites. Obviously Bakili. But those guys were all fast. I mean, that was what I loved, you know, and I loved fast athletes and guys that could sprint. Really, you know, technically sound runners were ones that I always looked up to.
I know it blows a lot of people's minds, but the fact that we have Kipchoge versus Bekele in the marathon 20 years after just sort of like their first ever marathon or Olympic showdown, like, does that blow even your mind too? Just sort of like these two guys were, you know, at the 2003 World Championships in Paris. On the track in the 5K.
Yeah, I remember having that issued Track and Field News, reading it, you know, being in high school and looking at those results, and the fact that they're still going strong and doing it at the highest level, you know, it speaks to those guys, you know, the longevity. And again, I'm big on mechanics, but they were so mechanically sound, both of those two, and they don't get hurt. You know, I think that consistency is such a big thing. And they, you know, Kipchoge especially, I think, is the model. He's been with more or less the same coach. You know, he's been in the same program, and his methodical year by year, month by month, day by day approach, I really believe that's a big reason why he's had such great longevity in his career.
For you, I guess, growing into the marathon, making that shift in 2016, like that was a really successful year. And, you know, coming away with the medal in Rio, I just remember sort of in that mix zone afterwards, Alberto had said, like, you know, he sees your potential as potentially like 205 in that event. And that was only just like the beginning of like the super shoes era. I mean, what did you sort of assess early on in the marathon as like, oh, like I think I could get to this level? And, you know, I know it's been tough with injuries, but like do you feel like you never reached it? Yeah,
I mean, I feel that there's a lot left that I could still run from a time perspective in a marathon. You know, for me, the balance was always about, or the emphasis was always about winning. You know, I would rather win in 210 than get fifth and run 203. That's just the athlete that I always was, and the way that I looked at racing and competing. And so, you know, when I won Chicago, it was a slow time, but that was one of the best races I've run. And, you know, I also ran a great marathon in Prague where I won. I ran 206. I certainly think that there was, you know, room for improvement from a time standpoint, but it's so hard with the marathon because so much depends on, you know, the weather and pacing, fueling. Yeah, I mean, there's so much that goes into it where you got to be really careful making something a record attempt, because it's not like the track where you have a lot of opportunities and there's a lot more things that you can control. So it's always been about competing.
What do you think, like, if you could experience one race in your whole life again, for the thrill of it, for just putting yourself back in those shoes, what's the one race? Man,
that's a real hard question. I have a lot that just they mean a lot. You know, I certainly, I think that London was probably one of the biggest ones, just because, you know, Mo was like, I lost to one of my best friends, you know, and he was really, we did so much together, and it was just such a big jump for both of us. You know, he had success at the World Championships the year before, but the Olympics are a whole nother animal. And for him to do that in his home country, I mean, I had to kind of tricked myself into thinking they were cheering for me too, even though it was all for him. But that is the loudest environment I've ever been in, you know, when he took the lead. And that rush was like nothing I can ever explain, you know. And the marathon's not really like that, because it's more you feel terrible at the end and you're just ready to be done. But yeah, I would say probably London 2012 was the one that I would go back and relive for sure.
You've got to be the biggest, most well-known athlete, at least in the track and field, that doesn't have any social media. Like,
I hate it.
Yeah, like, was that, because I'm sure like Nike's been like, have you thought about getting like an Instagram? Like,
you know,
is that just like I don't want anything to do with that.
Yeah, you know, after the Olympics in 2012, they had Mo and Matthew were like, you got to get back on it.
You got to.
They got to.
Yeah.
And it was kind of I did an interview with Ryan Seacrest, and I made some joke about like, oh, if you get Kim Kardashian to tweet at me or something, like I'll do it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure like he probably runs her account, and he did. So I was like, shoot. So I got to get back on, and so I did it for like a little bit, but yeah, it's just not my style. Yeah. You know, I get it.
Oh, I think it adds to it adds to the aura. No, it's
you have
one
some,
of the things.
Like,
I guess there's some
tweets that are still out there.
Really?
Yeah.
All right.
The account never gets shut down.
Okay. Yeah, I don't even remember how to get back on it. So. Yeah, somebody told me there was an Instagram account too. That
I think
I'm sure you got
account.
tons of fan accounts.
But it's not. Yeah, it's not me. I'm not on it.
Strava? No.
No, I'm not on anything.
Can you imagine the Rupp Strava numbers?
It would be the most followed account.
It'd be huge.
So I guess like for you, how do you sort of, is it just watching the broadcast, watching things on YouTube? You still stay tapped into the sport, even though like you're not publicly like out there commenting on things or like, or liking posts or anything like that. You stay tapped in.
Yeah, I'll read, you know, and talk to people, and you know, my buddies will send me stuff, you know, like links to that. So I'll just go through Safari or whatever and read them that way. But so I see them, but yeah, I try to follow it. I mean, I love it. I think that there's such a great young crop of athletes. I think here you're seeing like a generational switch almost with some of these that athletes I think are going to be there for a really long time and have really great careers. I've been really impressed.
Yeah.
The drama and stakes of like an Olympic trial is like, we've talked a lot just with some of these athletes about just sort of like the emotional just toll it takes on you just round by round and just having to get yourself up, you know, for each race. I guess, how did you do it?
I mean, I love these competitions. You know, this is what I live for. And it is a lot of pressure, but, you know, I looked at it more as an opportunity. This was what I had trained for, and I was so confident coming into these races, you know, about strategy and where I was, and I had such a clear plan of what I was going to do in every race that it was like a chance to go out there and compete, and that's what I live for. But there was certainly an element of being scared, you know, in these, because really things can just go wrong, you know, especially, you know, athletes that are expected to make a team. There's no like great result. You can have great performance, but it's like, all right, you made it. Now you got to go do it at the Olympics. And I do think that this system, though, you know, as brutal as it can be, it prepares people so well, you know, to have to get it right on that one day. You're ready for it. When you go through it a couple times, when you make that jump to a World Championships or an Olympics, you are so prepared to having it ready. And I think you can get your training dialed in so much that it doesn't phase you as much if you were just selected for it. Yeah.
Did you ever think you stoked fear in like your opponents? Like at least like on the U.S. stage, you could speak, you know.
It's terrifying out there. Yeah.
But like just credentials, performances, like it just, the work spoke for itself, that people keyed off of you in a lot of races. And I even just think of sometimes the tiniest things, like sitting on the starting line of like the marathon trials. Like what was behind that? Because everyone would blow up a little thing and be like, what is he doing?
Yeah. I mean, for the trials, honestly, like part of it was there's a clock. There was like 7 or 8 minutes left before the start. And I was like, we can't go anywhere. So I'm just going to sit down. I'm not going to stand up.
Smart.
But I also, you know, at that point, I wasn't in my own little zone, you know, and I'm going through all these scenarios that I've rehearsed in my head beforehand, where if somebody goes out fast, this is what I'm going to do. If it goes out slow, this is where I'm going to be. Where am I going to be in the pack? Like all those scenarios are the things that are running through my mind in a situation like that. And I'm not really worried about what anybody else is doing. You know, it's all about me. And that's one of the things, you know, from a young age that Alberto and the coaches that I, you know, worked with, they all preach that. You know, you have to be aware of what's going on, but ultimately I can't control what my competition is doing. So I have to be ready, and I have to know what I'm going to do, because when I get into a race, I just want to be reacting. I don't want to be thinking, oh, do I go right now? Do I sit back? Am I where I need to be? You know, even that mental energy is draining physically, I believe, too. And, you know, whenever I went out to compete, especially at 10K or 5K, I never wanted to have a race that I just, you know, didn't use as another opportunity to kind of cement in my competitors, like, I'm always ready to go. I'm always going to be there. Because there are certainly a lot of days where I didn't feel good when I was racing, but, you know, it never hurts having that kind of, I don't know, just fear kind of built up from consistent performances, and you never let it show when you're not feeling good. Because all great athletes will have off days. Nobody feels great every time they go out to race, but it's the ones that can stay as close to their peak performance when they're not feeling good. Those are the ones that end up being great. But certainly those mental things, you know, and it accumulates over the course of years. It certainly adds up.
I mean, just to play off that, like, he was very scary to race. Well, I mean, obviously his resume speaks for itself, but then he was like very definition of locked in before the races, not talking to people, not you know, there's other people who are really kind of joking around and play, like, there was no joke. We're not joking around. Yeah. We're taking, like,
I didn't want to see anybody. I didn't want to see anybody. Didn't want to talk to anybody. Like, I'll jog with you, but yeah, like, I was really.
We're not chatting on the warm up.
Was that hard with this guy?
Yeah. No. Well, Matthew, I would say more than anything, but he'd give me the laugh every once in a while. Yeah. That's just who he is.
You got it was tough to get Galen to laugh on a workout day, or you're not getting race day. See it, forget about it.
Yeah.
But he was incredibly intimidating to race against. It all adds up. I mean, we talked about how good your resume is, and you've been doing it for so long. You know, what is, like, because you could retire and have a great broadcast and coaching, like, what is it that's driving you to still be at it? Because it's incredibly tough to be at the top like you've been for so long. Is it you still want to make teams? Is it that you want to run faster? Like, what is still driving?
Yeah, I mean, I still think that I can be competitive at a world level. You know, I still think I can run a PR. You know, when I've been healthy and my body feels good, I've run great. Yeah. And it's just been, you know, it's weird because it's coincided with me being a little bit older, but this is the first time I've really kind of been in an injury cycle. Yeah. And I get it. You know, one of the great things that I was blessed with is, like, I had a lot of things come up, but they were always able to be managed really well, and I was able to work through them, and it never kind of translated into injury on injury on injury. And unfortunately, that's been the case for me the last couple of years. Yeah. But for me, it's always been about excellence. You know, that I would say, you know, bro, I remember he gave me this little flag that he had that just said the pursuit of excellence. And I had that in my apartment here in Eugene when I was in college. And that's what it's always been about for me, is just excellence. And I still feel that I have more to give. And, you know, if I feel like I wasn't going to be competitive, or, you know, if I knew, everybody says when you know, you know. Yeah. And I truly, in my heart, don't think that that's the case right now. So I just have to get healthy. But that's what drives me every day, is to still get the most out of myself and make sure that, you know, just because you're older doesn't mean you do things differently, but it's not a bad thing. Yeah. You know, you just have to make adjustments in training, because I can't do the same things that I could do as far as recovering from a hard workout that I could when I was 25 years old. Yeah. But I can still hit those workouts. It just maybe need a little more rest. But at the same time, my cardiovascular system is so much more developed being 38 now than 25. And that's a huge advantage. So it's just the philosophies, I would say, and things that I need to do in training have shifted, but I absolutely think that I still have a lot more to give in the marathon.
Yeah, it's hard when you're still active and, like, you know, you are pursuing, like, future teams and stuff. But have you ever sort of had the thought of, like, what is that storybook ending that you have for yourself in your career? Because, you know, we look at someone like Matthew, like, if this is it for him, right? Like, this probably isn't how he envisioned it. Going to the Olympics would have been amazing. Same thing with someone like Evan, who I think, like, Evan Jager might continue going, but for him, the storybook is, like, he fell in Paris in that Diamond League, and, like, getting back the chance to go to the Olympics in Paris to run, you know, one last games would have been perfect. Have you thought of, like, hey, like, you know, we know where these world championships are. Like, does Tokyo hold any sort of weight, or whatever it might be for you?
I mean, I think just getting back to winning and knowing that I left everything out there. that would be the best thing for me. I would love to be able to compete in LA. I would say that's my goal. To have an Olympics in your home country, I think would just be unbelievable. And that's really what I would love to target. I don't think there's any reason that I can't do it. And after that, we'll see how my body's hanging in there. But there's no doubt in my mind that that's what I want to keep doing. And this really left a bitter taste in my mouth this past trials. But it's been good. That's life. You can't look back on regret. Nobody's trajectory is ever perfect, and in a lot of ways, it's really lit a fire under me, and got a lot of hunger back having that defeat. And it's been so frustrating dealing with all these injuries, but I've learned so much just about movement and your body, and I'm really passionate about all that stuff. So it's hopefully that experience, even though it sucks to go through, is going to make me a better person, a better athlete going forward.
And I think one other thing is like, I just hearing you sort of like, all right, we're in this for another 4 more years. The New York Times put out this article a couple months back about just sort of like, this applies to everyone who's ever run a marathon, is a significant other involved in that sort of relationship and the sacrifices that they have to make. They're the ones cooking like just tons of carbs, and then that they also have to eat. They're the ones who have to stay home with the kids or whatever it is for 3+ hours on a long run day. And for you and your wife and your kids, like, is that an easy conversation to have? Like, hey, 4 more years of this, and I guess what goes into that decision making?
I mean, it's easy in the sense that like I lucked out, and I have the most supportive wife and family I could ever ask for. I mean, she has never once doubted me, never once thought, oh, maybe you should think about doing this. She is all in just as much as I'm all in, and that has meant the world to me. It's definitely not been easy on her. She has sacrificed, I think I've said it before, but really she sacrificed everything, her own personal goals, her own life to really fully support me. And that's never lost on me. She's an amazing mom, and she takes the brunt of dealing with all our kids. I've got 4 kids, and it's busy. It's hectic at our house. And she handles that with a smile. She never complains, and she's like, you do what you need to do. But there have definitely been times where I felt guilty where, I rarely woke up with my kids when they were babies at night, and she's dealing on very little sleep, and she still is telling me, go take a nap for 2 hours in the afternoon. I'll watch the kids. I mean, that's just how selfless she is. And for me, that's been really inspiring. Just when I train, I know like she's giving everything. She's giving more than everything to help me follow my own selfish dreams and my goals. And that's just been such a driving force for me to always make sure that I'm doing everything I can to hold up my end of the deal and be the best athlete that I can be. But it is really hard on your family. I missed a lot of stuff with my kids already. So I really try to cherish every moment I have with them. But it is my job, and I'm really lucky and fortunate to have such a special job. But it's certainly a balance for sure.
All right, favorite and least favorite thing about being a professional runner?
I mean, my favorite thing is just being able to do it. Like, I get paid, I get tons of free shoes and free Nike gear. Like, I've always been a Nike head my whole life, and that has been like, it's like the greatest perk of my job. Like Kira still makes fun of me when I get excited that I get a new pair of shoes, or she's like, you don't need another pair of shoes.
Do you have a
like,
1 in, 1 out rule, or like, is it hard?
Right now, I do have kind of a 1 in, 1 out. I've kind of reached my capacity, I think, because for a while I was going 1 to stock, 1 to rock, and so that added up quick. And then so I've been getting rid of them slowly to people over the years, like friends of mine and stuff like that. But I'm a sneakerhead at heart.
What are like the most cherished ones in the collection?
Most cherished ones. I mean, my most cherished ones would be all the Oregon Jordans that I have. I think I've got 3s, 4s, 5s, 14s. Maybe one other one. I
Do you
can't
get all
remember,
the? Do you get the? I'm sure they send you a pair.
Not
every
all
year.
of them, no. But I'd certainly get a few. They take good care of me.
Yeah.
And I've always been like, I don't know. I love Air Maxes. The 90s, 95s, 97s, Air Force Ones I've got some good ones.
Yeah.
All right. So least favorite thing.
Least favorite thing is just travel. Like, I'm really a homebody. Like, even going to altitude camp was always hard for me. Like, I hated being away from home. Just missing things. Sometimes, when buddies of mine would be like, oh, I got the weekend off, and you still have to train, that's a hard thing, because it is like a 365-day-a-year job. Like, I would take 2 weeks off after the after the spring and then after the fall, whether it was a marathon or track. And that was like my time to have fun and go crazy. But you miss a lot of things because you always have to make sure you get your training in. I mean, there's no shortcuts around that. And, the second I think you start saying, oh, it's okay if I take a day off here or there, I mean, you just never want to let that seep into your mentality. Yeah. So that's the hardest thing, I would say, for sure.
Best meet atmosphere you've ever been to?
Best meet atmosphere is right here, Hayward Field. I don't really have a ton of experience running the new stadium.
I was gonna say, have you run in the new stadium?
I ran the trials here in 2021. Yeah. Which again didn't go great, but I love the old stadium. To me, running past those East grandstands was one of my favorite things in the world. Doing strides on the backstretch. Yeah. You hear people pounding on the wood and the footsteps and. I just missed you. You would hear that roar. Yeah. Oh, it was like a tiger roar or something at the Masters.
It was
someone
louder.
Had a great throw or, someone was kicking. Yeah. That was really cool, I thought. But I love the new stadium too. Yeah. Yeah. Nothing beats Hayward.
Yeah. Best road race, I guess, experience.
Best road race would have to be Chicago. I love the people there. Yeah, I mean, my dad's from there, and so I have a deep connection with the city there. And I also love Boston. That was one of the most fun running weekends I'd ever been a part of when I went over there. I would love to go back there. But the fact that the history of it, the fact you're running point to point, and it's like 5 or 6 people deep the whole way of the course. They let the Red Sox out, so you get those stadium fans coming and. It's just a really special atmosphere. I love Boston. Yeah.
One fun thing, a stat that I guess was out there when I think Meb retired was number of miles he's run in his career because he's probably kept track of it in some way, shape, or form. And someone calculated how many times around the world that is. So I'm curious, just random numbers. How many miles do you think you've estimated in the Nike Woods or the Michael Johnson track on the Nike campus?
A lot. I mean, that's where I train almost every day, and I'm big on soft surfaces. I really avoided concrete like the plague. So I would loop around and I never had a problem doing it. I mean, I don't know if I could estimate it. I can tell you one time, I ran, I think 21 miles just around the grass soccer fields. So just doing laps around there. Yeah.
I remember that. I remember they were for long runs. It would be, we'd start on the grass loop and we'd get
sometimes we never left.
That's what that was. I was like, guys, we got to get off here. And there was but there was no plan to ever leave the grass. I was like, we could at least go on the wood chip loop or the woods. But no, you were not you guys would log some serious miles just doing laps on the turf, laps on the grass.
I loved it. I still love it. I don't know what. I love running on treadmills too, which I know a lot of people think that's the worst thing in the world, but it's never bothered me.
Longest amount of time on a treadmill?
Longest time on a treadmill. I mean, I've definitely run 26 miles on a treadmill before in one go. Yeah, I do 24 mile runs on a treadmill regularly.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Music or no music?
I'll sometimes listen to music or I have TV on. I'm not just staring at a wall with nothing. I'm not that crazy, but close.
All right, Galen. Well, we appreciate you stopping by and looking forward to and excited that you said the comeback is already back. Back to running, and so we're looking forward to seeing what races you might have in store this fall, and the fact that you've got unfinished business in the marathon, so that's exciting. And thanks for coming by. And I think people are going to walk away from this thing being like, that he needs to be a broadcaster when the running thing's over.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. It's been fun.